Hi there, welcome to today's reading vlog. So this one's a bit of an interesting one in that I don't exactly know how it's gonna play out, but I guess just to introduce what is happening and what we're gonna be doing. In essence, my husband and I are going to California for a vacation to celebrate his golden birthday. We are going to Monterey, California, and then we're also going to Yosemite National Park towards the end of May, early June, and we're gonna do some other stuff in between there. And before I go, I'd like to read some books centered on Monterey, looking at Monterey, and then also centered on Yosemite. I'd also, and this is where it gets a little bit fuzzy in that I don't know exactly how the vlog is going to turn out. I'd also like to vlog while we're there and look at some of the books that I read while I'm on vacation, but I don't have those mapped out. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to get up to while we're there. I might be able to convince Chris to listen to some audiobooks while we're driving around between Monterey from where we fly into, and also while we're driving to Yosemite. I might just get up to some kind of classic vacation reads, so maybe like some Emily Henry, some romance, some kind of like summery, vacation-y, beachy reads, or I might just be jumping into things that have been on my TBR for a while. So this is going to be a little bit of a choose your own adventure. I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm just going to periodically check in with you as I get up to reading. But those are just kind of some general ideas and things that I have in my mind so far. The book that I know I am going to 100% be reading in this vlog is John Steinbeck's Cannery Row, because we've picked it for my May book club. So I will be giving you updates on this book. The only thing that I know about Cannery Row is that it kind of centers on a group of individuals who live on Cannery Row in Monterey who are maybe a little bit disadvantaged compared to maybe the rest of the population who lives in Monterey. And it just centers on their experiences and kind of the love and camaraderie that they find in each other. And I'm really excited to read this. I've read a couple of other John Steinbecks and had kind of mixed results. I love Grapes of Wrath. That's probably one of my favorite books of all time. I read that in college. And then I also read Of Mice and Men and had kind of mixed feelings about it as a freshman. But also I was a freshman, and so I don't really remember like my particular angst about that book. I'd be really keen to reread it and understand from maybe like a more mature perspective, like what I was thinking and why I felt the way that I felt. And there's other John Steinbecks that I'm really interested in reading in the future, for instance, like East of Eden. But then in this vlog in particular, I'd really like to also read, I think it's Tortilla Flat, because that one is also centered in Monterey. So those are a couple books that I'd be interested to read, but I'm gonna get back to you when I start reading Cannery Row. And then you'll just have to stay tuned for what else we get up to in this one. I hope it'll make for an interesting vlog, as it's a little bit less planned out than some of the other things that I typically do. But I'll check in with you when I start reading this one, and I'm excited. I'm really excited. Okay, I wanted to give a brief update about Cannery Row. My book club is tomorrow and I'm currently halfway through. I'm gonna keep reading. Chris is closing tonight, so I have nothing to do but continue to read this book. So I imagine I'm gonna make some decent progress on it tonight. I might finish it. I probably won't finish it, but I could finish it. I'll probably leave most of it for tomorrow. But I'm about halfway through, and really, this book is like no plot, all vibes. If I had to like summarize what's going on in the book, for the most part, it's really just a reflection of kind of the people who are living on Cannery Row and their lives, and kind of the setting of Cannery Row, like some of the shops, some of the homes, and again, like definitely like the inhabitants who are living on Cannery Row. The predominant cast that we're focusing on are definitely like Mac and the boys, Mac and his, I guess, like group of friends, or they're like a group of guys who are, they haven't really been described in age. Mac has been, he's like said he's like late 40s, and the other guys, some of them are like mid-20s. I would imagine the whole group of these guys fit from like 20s to 40s. We have discovered that they have taken up lodging in one of the homes along Cannery Row. One of the grocers, he like acquired a space on Cannery Row, and Mac and the boys approached the grocer and were like, hey, we will stay in this place that you acquired rent-free. Mind you, but we'll take care of it. We'll make sure like it doesn't catch on fire. We'll make sure nobody robs it, and like we'll just generally take care of it. And Lee, who owns this place and owns the grocery store, was like, okay, I want you to pay me rent, but like kind of understood implicitly that they wouldn't pay rent. And so anyways, the chapters flip back and forth between like Mac and what Mac's group of friends get up to. We learn about like some of the odd jobs that they do, some of the things that they do in Monterey. And then on the other hand, we learn about some of the other inhabitants that are living in Monterey. We've learned about, for instance, this guy named Doc, who like works kind of, I think kind of almost as like a marine biologist. We've learned about like a brothel and some of its inhabitants. So that's kind of the situation. I just finished up a really funny scene of Mac and the boys who were sent on this odd job to collect frogs. That was a really funny scene. If you read it, you know. So far there's been really interesting exploration of gender in a very like in some ways progressive, in some ways not progressive, depending on like what character perspective you're looking at it from. I also think, so this book was written in 1945, but we're set in 1932, and so it's a really interesting perspective of the time. Like a really good reflection of what's happening in 1932 in terms of like post-prohibition, in terms of the rise of the automobile. We're getting kind of electricity, and just a more modern United States coming out of like an industrial revolution as things are, you know, yeah, just becoming more modern, and also like sitting in the Great Depression. So that's where we're situated. And then there have also just been some really, really beautiful reflections of Monterey and just how Monterey feels and felt at this time. It doesn't really feel like a beachy, resorty town. It feels, at least Cannery Row, maybe there's other parts of Monterey that were for the rich, were for vacationers, that did feel like kind of like a West Coast Hamptons, but at least what we're getting on Cannery Row, it feels very, I don't want to say industrial, but it does feel like it's focused on the commodities that Monterey has to offer, which would be, you know, like the marine wildlife or the fishing industry that Monterey has to pull in. So I'd like to read a couple quotes. I've been tabbing this like crazy, which is unlike me, but there's been a lot of really, really pretty quotes in here describing different parts of Monterey. Ooh. Hi, Obi. Oh my goodness. You want to join us as we read? Oh, okay. All right. Good boy. Doc was collecting marine animals in the great tide pool on the tip of the peninsula. It is a fabulous place when the tide is in, a wave-churned basin creamy with foam, whipped by the combers that roll in from the whistling buoy on the reef. But when the tide goes out, the little water world becomes quiet and lovely. The sea is very clear, and the bottom becomes fantastic with hurrying, fighting, feeding, breeding animals. Crabs rush from frond to frond of the waving algae. Starfish squat over mussels and limpets, attach their million little suckers, and then slowly lift with incredible power until the prey is broken from the rock. And then the starfish stomach comes out and envelops its food. Orange and speckled and fluted nudibranches slide gracefully over the rocks, their skirts waving like the dresses of Spanish dancers. And black eels poke their heads out of crevices and wait for prey. The snapping shrimps with their trigger claws pop loudly. The lovely colored world is glassed over. Hermit crabs, like frantic children, scamper on the bottom sand. And now one, finding an empty snail shell he likes better than his own, creeps out, exposing his soft body to the enemy for a moment, and then pops into the new shell. A wave breaks over the barrier and churns the glassy water for a moment and mixes bubbles into the pool, and then it clears and is tranquil and lovely and murderous again. Here, a crab tears a leg from his brother. The anemones expand like soft and brilliant flowers, inviting any tired and perplexed animal to lie for a moment in their arms. And when some small crab or little tide pool Johnny accepts the green and purple invitation, the petals whip in. The stinging cells shoot tiny narcotic needles into the prey, and it grows weak and perhaps sleepy, while the searing caustic digestive acids melt its body down. Then the creeping murderer, the octopus, steals out slowly, softly, moving like a gray mist, pretending now to be a little bit of weed, now a rock, now a lump of decaying meat, while its evil goat eyes watch coldly. It oozes and flows toward a feeding crab, and it comes close. Its yellow eyes burn, and its body turns rosy with the pulsing color of anticipation and rage. Then, suddenly, it runs lightly on the tips of its arms, as ferociously as a charging cat. It leaps savagely on the crab. There is a puff of black fluid, and the struggling mass is obscured in the sepia cloud while the octopus murders the crab. On the exposed rocks, out of water, the barnacles bubble behind their closed doors, and the limpets dry out. And down to the rocks come the black flies to eat anything they can find. The sharp smell of iodine from the algae and the lime smell of calcareous bodies, and the smell of powerful protein, smell of sperm and ova fill the air. On the exposed rocks, the starfish emit semen and eggs from between their rays. The smells of life and richness, of death and digestion, of decay and birth burden the air. And salt spray blows in from the barrier where the ocean waits for its rising tide strength to permit it back into the great tide pool again. And on the reef, the whistling buoy bellows like a sad, impatient bull. Okay, and again, there's just this description of Monterey that I'd be really curious. It's like in the opening pages. I'd just be curious when I go there. I feel like this is just going to be really different from what current present day Monterey is like. I just feel like it is developed so differently from probably how Steinbeck experienced it when he was living in Salinas and around Monterey in, the 30s and 40s. So he's talking about how people get up and are on Cannery Row trying to go to work, and he says, "They come running to clean and cut and pack and cook and can the fish. The whole street rumbles and groans and screams and rattles while the silver rivers of fish pour in out of the boats, and the boats rise higher and higher in the water until they are empty. The canneries rumble and rattle and squeak until the last fish is cleaned and cut and cooked and canned, and then the whistles scream again, and the dripping, smelly, tired wops and Chinamen and Polacks, men and women, straggle out and droop their ways up the hill into the town, and Cannery Row becomes itself again, quiet and magical. Its normal life returns. The bums who retired in disgust under the black cypress trees come out to sit on the rusty pipes in the vacant lot. The girls from doors emerge for a bit of sun if there is any. Doc strolls from the Western Biological Laboratory and crosses the street to Lee Chong's grocery for 2 quarts of beer. Henry the painter noses like an Airedale through the junk in the grass-grown lot for some part of wood or metal he needs for the boat he is building. Then the darkness edges in and the street light comes on in front of Dora's, the lamp which makes perpetual moonlight in Cannery Row. Callers arrive at Western Biological to see Doc, and he crosses the street to Lee Chong's for 5 quarts of beer. So, yeah. So far, I'm definitely enjoying Cannery Row. I think, I don't know, it's just John Steinbeck's writing just has lots of little surprises along the way, and I just think always has, I don't know, something to say about human nature. I'm going to be really excited at the end to see what he has to say. I like that this is just like little vignettes in between kind of, I guess, like the bigger overarching story. But I also like that this just feels like really low stakes. Like, we're not following a big plot. It's just very much like a study on a place, like a very specific place at a very specific point in time, through kind of a group of characters that he is choosing to focus on, and then the way that these characters interact with like a larger group of characters in this cast that he's choosing to focus on through their vignettes. I'm really enjoying that. So I'll give you some updates when I finish it, probably after my book club tomorrow. I finished Cannery Row a couple days ago, and we've only just had our book club today. We postponed it, we rescheduled it due to someone in the book club having a scheduling conflict, and so I thought I would pop on here and give you kind of my final thoughts. I rated this a 3.75 out of 5, and that's not because the book itself is bad. In fact, the book itself objectively is really, really good. I think it's written well. I think it's exploring incredible themes around human nature, around community, around things we do with people in our community related to forgiveness, kind of the trust and loyalty that we extend to the people that we care about, and just, yeah, the general kind of camaraderie that you develop as part of a community. This book did everything well and was an enjoyable read, but because, as I mentioned in the beginning, it was low plot, low stakes, because there's just quite a bit going on in my personal life and also my professional life. Because of that, there's just a lot going on in my mind, and because there's not a plot to tie me to this book, I had to really intentionally focus on each of the individual stories that were going on, and if they didn't grip me from the very beginning, it wasn't a guarantee that I was going to stay completely locked in. And just the way that I have my rating scale, that is something that I account for. If it's not something that can keep me fully engaged, I do dock points for that. And I think it's really an issue of timing. Had I read this at literally any other time, I think I would have had a much better reading experience than I did while reading this at this particular time. But I do think this was a really, really beautiful depiction of the role of community during really hard times, such as during the Depression. I think this was a really incredible depiction of community coming together to make kind of small, miraculous joys a bigger deal than they otherwise would be had you just been celebrating or doing them alone. And I also think it was a good exploration of kind of pushing against the conventions of what maybe society might expect of us, especially when it comes to kind of ambition. The kind of inhabitants of Cannery Row pushed against that in order to, you know, gain like better enlightenment for themselves or just to kind of help their community members out. And so overall, just a lot of really fantastic things going on in this book, not only related to just the activities, but also the setting. And I found it to be a really enjoyable read. I just think I wasn't in the headspace to just appreciate it as much as I could have had I read it at a different time. But I'm really excited to go to Monterey. I'm excited to go to Cannery Row and see what has changed from when Steinbeck was describing this in 1945, but set the book in 1932, and compared to, you know, how it's going to look in 2026. So we will stay tuned for updates. I am dropping this off at the library right now, and I'm going to go to my other library to pick up some holds that I have, Steinbeck, Muir, and others, and I'll check in with you when I pick those up. Okay, I've made it home, and I got all the books I was looking for and a couple extras. So I was able to get Guardians of the Valley by Dean King, which is subtitled John Muir and the Friendship That Saved the Yosemite. I don't know which friendship he's referring to. If it's a friendship between John Muir. Oh, it says a friendship between John Muir and Robert Underwood Johnson. I don't know who that is, but basically it's all about John Muir and his environmentalism and how I think they got Yosemite to be a national park. So I'm really looking forward to reading this, ideally before I go to Yosemite National Park. I also got John Steinbeck's Tortilla Flat. You can even see on the cover it says Monterey on there. So we're going to read another John Steinbeck set in Monterey. I think this one was published before Cannery Row, so I'm excited about this one. Next up, I have the Yosemite by John Muir. This is basically his diary from when he was sheep herding in the Yosemite National Park, I believe. I'm pretty sure that's what this one is, and I'm pretty excited about that. I also, in a surprise turn of events, picked up East of Eden by John Steinbeck. And I picked this up because when I was reading Cannery Row, I read the first introductory pages and it said that this is set in the Salinas Valley, which is really, really close to Monterey. I don't know if I'm going to get to this. Absolutely no guarantees that I get to this because it is almost 600 pages long, but I'd really like to. I've been meaning to read this. It's on my TBR, and I figure there's no better time to read one of John Steinbeck's most iconic works set in California, about California, written by somebody who grew up in and around Monterey than during this video. So I picked this up and I hope to get to it. And then finally, I picked up John Muir's nature writings. There's a bunch of stories in here, but the one that I really, really want to read is My First Summer in the Sierra. And maybe I got the Yosemite and My First Summer in the Sierra wrong. Maybe this is the diary and the other one is like his other observations. I don't know which one's which, but I've been wanting to read some books or some like writings by John Muir, and this is the one that I'll be focusing on, My Summer in the Sierra, which is actually Yosemite, for this particular reading vlog. So those are some books that I picked up for kind of like my homework books, and I'll give you some updates when I get started on one of them. Hello vlog. Hopefully you can see me. This is my first check-in. We've been here for 2.5 days. It's Saturday now. We got in on Thursday. On Thursday we got into San Jose. We drove down to Monterey where we're staying. We made some stops in Santa Cruz. We just drove down the Pacific Coast Highway. It was really nice. And then yesterday, kind of same thing. We drove on the Pacific Coast Highway, made a bunch of stops in and around kind of the central coast of California, did some hikes. It was really nice. And I just wanted to provide kind of my first reading update of the vlog. It's not a good one. I am sad to report that I have to DNF the Yosemite by John Muir. This is my first DNF of the year. Okay, so it says I'm 41 pages in of 280, and it's not because it's bad. It's just it has literally put me to sleep 2 out of 2 times reading it, and I just can't. I can't be bothered to read that right now. I think I need to try something else while I'm here on vacation. I can't be going to sleep every time I pick up this book. It's the first time I fell asleep was on the plane ride here, which is insane. I'm not someone who sleeps on a plane. Typically, I'm someone who will read the entire time I'm on a plane. So that was shocking. Then the second time was this morning. I woke up before Christopher and thought like, oh, I'll get some reading in, and I like immediately fell back asleep, which is abnormal for me. But the Yosemite, it's not his travel journals, which I think I might have mentioned when I was picking up the books, but really is kind of him reflecting on and giving an explanation of the different parts of Yosemite National Park, and it really almost reads kind of like a travel guide. So he's talking about really, yeah, like every different kind of portion of the park, and honestly it reads like a proud homeowner walking you through his house and being like, and this is the kitchen, and this is the bathroom, and this is my dining room, and like these are all the really fascinating unique elements of how I might have crafted, or this is like where I got the cabinets from, and this is where I got the granite from in my kitchen, and this is where I got my bed from, and this is this really unique thing about the land that we're on. And that's kind of fun. It's unique, and he definitely has this like amazing appreciation for nature. He treats it as a human being, which I love. So yeah, that's to say, like it's not bad. It's just not what I think I need right now while we're on vacation. I think I'll like his travel journals a little bit more, as he was literally first approaching Yosemite National Park when he was sheep herding back in the 1800s. I think that'll be a better fit, but that's back at home, and I'll read that when I get back home, because it was in a thick tome and I couldn't find it on Libby, and I didn't want to bring the whole tome with me. But otherwise, we're also reading Dissection of a Murder. Chris and I are reading that on audio. We have started that. We are about a third of the way through, and just to give you a little bit of a plot synopsis, basically, we are following Layla. She's a barrister, and in the UK legal system, there's like kind of two different types of lawyers. There's solicitors who prepare cases and do like a lot of like kind of the paperwork admin-y stuff of like putting a case together, and then there's barristers who represent cases in court. We're following Layla, who's a barrister. She has basically a second chance to represent a client who, the first time she represented him, he went to jail because, you know, it's not clear if it's really because she made a mistake. I don't know if it's really because she made a mistake, but the way that she chose to represent Jack the first time created some risk. And long story short, he went to prison the first time that she represented him, but he liked her approach, and he liked that he like believed her when no one else did, and so he specifically requested that she represent him this time, and he is accused of murdering another not a barrister, but another person in the legal profession, a judge. And so it's a really high profile case, especially in the legal society. And what makes this case even more complicated is that Layla has never done a murder case. She's done other criminal cases, you know, dealing with rape, dealing with assault, dealing with drug charges, all those things, but she's never dealt with a murder case, and which is, you know, higher stakes because someone is literally dead. And oftentimes the punishment is a lot more severe than, you know, other criminal cases. And to make it even more complicated, the prosecutor that she's going against, the prosecuting barrister that she's going against, is her own husband. And to make matters even worse, her husband was her old pupil master, which in the British system, basically, he kind of tutored her for a year. He gave her all the knowledge that she has of being a barrister for a year, and they weren't romantically linked for that year. They put off being together for 5 years, but still it makes it a lot more complicated because she wants to turn to him, she wants to trust him in the things that he is saying to her, but I think there's just a lot more to this case than meets the eye. And so far it is really twisty. There are a lot of injects of information that are coming at us. There are a lot of players involved in kind of the legal community, but then also this case is involving kind of the criminal scene within the United Kingdom, which is really, really interesting. Like, Jack is the accused is involved with various criminal organizations, and so those equities are definitely involved. And there's also been some kind of hints that maybe we as the readers are going to be learning more throughout this case. Things are going to be revealed to us. And so I'm going to turn it back to my past self and Christopher as we give you some of our first impressions. We talked about our first impressions yesterday when we were kind of at I think about the 20% way mark. And so you'll hear those from yesterday, and then we'll give you some more updates as we continue to read through the book during our vacation. But we'll talk soon. Okay, what are your first impressions of, is it Dissection of a Murder? Is that what we're listening to? Yeah, Dissection of a Murder. No spoilers.
I like it.
You like it? Mm-hmm. What do you like about it?
I can see why it's going to be the second season of Presumed Innocent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's got that same vibe of like the inside of a courtroom that I like in like TV shows and movies. So it's fun to do it in a book setting for like the first time ever.
Yeah. What do you think about our main character, Layla?
I think she's got some baggage that's yet to be revealed.
Ooh, spicy. Okay. And what do you think about like the case and just like the circumstances of the case? So she's doing a murder case for the first time, and she has to go up against her husband.
Yeah, I think in true societal fashion, homeboy's trying to mansplain everything to his wife.
Yeah, and she's like, I mean, to make it even more complicated, he was her pupil master or whatever.
before they were ever romantically involved, fine. But she has, like, a lot of trust in him, I think, in a way that she probably shouldn't, and is gonna create some complications for her.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Leave it in there.
No. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to share?
No.
I really liked at the beginning that because we're dealing with British law and a British case, that they defined everything we needed to know. Like, they defined solicitor, they defined barrister, they defined the pupillage, and, like, all the things that were going to be discussed in this book that would make it really helpful for us to understand what was going on in this case. I thought that was helpful. But anyways, we're here. We're going to lunch. Do you have thoughts on lunch?
I'm curious where I park.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Bye. I'm excited.
Shoulders by the time she's finished. Next, her ladyship asks them to leave the courtroom so we can address a few other matters before the trial gets underway.
Okay, hi there. We have been driving around Yosemite for the last couple days, and we went from Monterey to Pinnacles National Park, and then from Pinnacles National Park to Yosemite National Park. So we've had a lot of time to listen to our book, and we finished it today. So we're here to talk about our thoughts. Overall, yeah, what thoughts do you have to give? No spoilers.
I liked it a lot. I did.
What do you like about it?
Well, it's like the first book I've ever listened to.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind it.
You didn't mind it? Did you find it to be entertaining, or did you find yourself drifting at times? Because sometimes that happens with audiobooks where, like, you don't focus.
No, I was pretty locked in. I mean, I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
For, like, a murder mystery, you watch a lot of, like, murder, crime, thriller sorts of things on TV. Did you find it to be, like, surprising, engaging? I don't know, like, compared to, I guess, yeah, what you watch on TV, like, what did you think about it?
Well, I think it helped that I knew it was becoming a season 2 adaptation.
For Presumed Innocent, right?
Yeah.
Which is the Apple TV series.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really helpful to have someone to talk to while listening to, like, a murdery, thrillery kind of book, because then we could cross-check the information that we heard and make sure we were on the same page. And also it was fun to talk about, like, theories for things. And to that point, I think it would be really, like, a really, really good book club book, because at the heart of it, there's, like, the main... It's like a legal thriller, so it's set in a courtroom. It's a courtroom drama. At the, like, center of the book, we see, like, all the pre-trial work, and we see the court case and kind of how it unfolds. And so there's a question of, like, did Jack Millman murder Anton Smythe, this judge? But then there's all these other questions related to some of the relationships between characters, to just other circumstances that happened around the murder that I think made it a really engaging read and gave you a lot to think about and try to put all the pieces together. I'll say for us, we got, like, maybe 1 out of 5 things right. I don't know exactly how many things there were to track or to, like, try to get right. We got, like, one kind of thing right. We guessed one thing and we're like, oh, we think that's happening, and that was correct. But the rest of it, we were, I think, kept on our toes the whole time, second guessing what was provided to us and just trying to piece together, like I said, all these different things that were going on. I don't know, would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I'll say for me, I really enjoyed it. I found it hard to put down, like, at the end of our day, or if we had to, like, get out. Yesterday we did a really big hike, for instance. When we got to the trailhead, I was like, I don't want to put this book down. I want to keep reading.
Yeah, that's how I felt too. I
Yeah.
was like, I with it being audio, I was like, is it weird to just go back and then just listen to it?
And it was just there. I feel like there were so many like little bombs dropped, especially as the like case was being unrolled in court, just with how the defense was put together, that I just constantly wanted to know like what was going on and what was next. And I think one thing that we didn't tell you about in our first update was the author, I think, really intelligently introduced this idea of a witness X to help inform what's going on in the case. Someone who was like probably likely involved in the case in some way and can provide additional information but hasn't like come to the fore. We don't understand who this person is until really much later into the book, but she or he is like slowly dropping information kind of throughout the book as like chapters progress. We'll get like a bunch of chapters from the main barrister, and then witness X will come in and be like, here's some additional information that you should know about, or like these are some things that I'm thinking, or yeah, here's a flashback. I thought that was really intelligent because it just helped us have a better sense of like what was going on, and just trying to, that was like another thing you're trying to figure out, like who is witness X and like why do they matter to this case. Some of that became clear as the book went on, and some of it just kind of remained a mystery until it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I thought there's like Presumed Innocent season 1.
Mm-hmm.
There's this old school legal, I don't even know if old school is the right word, but it's a movie called Primal Fear with
Mm-hmm.
Ed Norton.
Mm-hmm.
There's the one, I think it's called Usual Suspects.
Mm-hmm.
It's got Kevin Spacey, and it's like the chase of Kaiser Soze. These are all like big reveals.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3 examples I shared are big reveals, and this just slides into that category as well.
Oh, that's cool that you're able to like pin this book up against like other film and movie or like show adaptations that you've seen.
Well, yeah, because Presumed Innocent is a book.
Oh, okay.
It's like a guy wrote that
And
book.
they adapted it into the first season.
I think it's a movie, too. I think Harrison Ford might be in the movie.
Oh, and
Like
then they chose to like readapt it in
Yeah,
like a
Apple
more
TV.
modern sense.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So
And
that'd
then
be a
when
fun
we
book
were
to
doing
read.
research for this, we found out that before this book was even published to the public, Macmillan, who are the publishers, they went out and basically tried to option this to different film studios, and Apple TV picked it up for Presumed Innocent season 2.
I actually think it's the inverse.
Oh,
I think Apple TV went shopping for murder books.
yeah, you're right.
I
Like
don't
we
think
learned
like
that
this,
they were
I don't
shopping,
think Joe
but
Murray and her crew were like waving people over like, we have
I
the
thought
golden
that's what
ticket.
we read that they did.
No, I think they, well, maybe, I guess, once they found
Or maybe
out that
Apple TV came to them.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think, I don't know how it works, I guess, so.
The point is, this was shopped and optioned before the book was even published.
Season 2.
Season 2, Presumed Innocent, is this book, Dissection of a Murder. And we found out it's already been casted, it's already been filmed, and they're going to release it late 2026, right? The second season?
They might be filming now, I don't know the specifics, yeah. But supposedly, they're trying to keep it as parallel to the book as they can, so pretty soon, I would think, if the book just came out, so. My guess is a trailer in the summer, or trailers dropped throughout the summer, and like a late fall-ish, late 2026. Really, something to get us through, maybe the tweener period between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Well, and I feel like that makes sense. Like, give the book an opportunity to get hyped up, give people an opportunity to read it, and like learn that there's an adaptation, and then drop it. And as we were talking about, maybe they drop it around the time when all these book lists are coming out at the end of the year of like the best books of 2026 or the most notable books of 2026, or like the Goodreads Choice Awards. If this book gets nominated for that, I think that helps build like the hype around the adaptation that is absolutely coming. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel like there's just countless episodes of like Law and Order SVU You know, like there's a lot of like cinema or whatever you want to call it that I've seen. And so when you pair having already liked season 1 of Presumed Innocent, knowing that this book is season 2 before we started listening to it, plus the plethora of examples I could probably give you of things I've seen in my life that were like, this fits. Anyway, this just like slides in. It's the type of stuff I like from like a TV show, movie perspective, and so it was kind of fun to read. Well, I didn't even really read it.
We had it read to us.
Somebody read it
and
to me.
It was amazing.
And it was good.
And to that point, I think that the audiobook narrator was great. I really liked her.
Insert their name here.
Yeah, insert her name here. She was great. The audiobook narrator was amazing. They modulated their voice a little bit between like male and female and some of the different characters, but I think because it was set in the United Kingdom, it was helpful to have it read in like the appropriate accents. I think it helps with like the immersion of the whole thing. Before we go into more information about the adaptation,
Sure.
how would you rank the book out of 5?
Well, I'm not really a big book reader, so probably a 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I had a great time.
But it was good though. Like it was really good.
Well, yeah, it's not like it's the only book I've ever read, but I really liked it. Like I said, for all the reasons I feel like I already explained.
Yeah.
Like just the plethora of examples of things I like that it slides into. It's like, how would I not?
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm hoping that the adaptation does my
Version
experience of the book justice. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is a tough one that be a tough one to mess up.
Yeah, they'd have to really try.
Yeah.
Because it's laid out really well. I'd give it a 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was really good.
Wow.
But some of the
I
stuff...
mean, 4.5 is probably more realistic. That way there's wiggle room to get to a 5-star. But for...
Just for me, I wasn't like 5-star feeling. And it also didn't reach 4.75 of being like an objectively like perfect book or like really good book. But like I didn't see any flaws with it. I think a 4.5, there were a couple things that bothered me. Like Layla, for instance...
No spoilers.
No spoilers, no, but just like kind of repeatedly harped on like her past mistakes and like feeling really guilty about those things. And I think that's all reasonable and totally fair given like the case that she had and her previous experience. But it just, for me, was really hard to hear like over and over and over and over again. I have a hard time when books repeat information a lot. Like I got it the first time, I don't need it many more times. And then also... some of the stuff that happened after the court case, I just was like, is this realistic? Do I feel good about this? Didn't love, like, some of the stuff that happened. But I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, walking on thin ice there, pal.
Oh, stop.
Jesus.
Stop. But I think, like, last thing I want to mention before we go into the adaptation is that the ending is definitely... like, the ending is, like, definitely ambiguous. And I didn't mind that. I don't have a problem with that. I think it was fun. And again, I think, like, for, like, book clubs would be really, really good to talk about and discuss and, like, get people's thoughts on.
Sure.
I don't know how you felt. Like, did you get to the end and you were like, oh my god, I can't believe that's how it ended? Or were you, like, okay with it?
I don't think I can discuss without spoilers.
Oh, okay. Let's talk a little bit about the adaptation.
Okay.
We've learned who the cast is, right? Like the main cast.
Well, 50% of us have learned, yeah.
Oh, you've learned. Okay, well, we can talk about... I haven't learned. I wanted this to be a surprise. And by what I mean by the main cast is that, like, the characters that I think played, like, a predominant role in the book. There are a ton of characters in the book, all of whom... are important to varying degrees, but like the main characters central to the court case are Layla the barrister, Davina the solicitor, so like the other lawyer, not the one who like represents publicly but is kind of like the background lawyer, Julian the prosecuting barrister, and Layla's husband, and then Jack Millman, who is the accused. And of course, there are, like I said, many other people who are going to be really important, and I hope they get the casting right. But those are, like, the main 4 that I think we know who's going to be in it, right? Or no?
Well, confirmed is only... well, Only one confirmed is Layla.
Okay, and the others?
The others are speculatory, if that's a word.
Yeah, speculative.
So the first one...
Wait, but we have guesses for who we think could be.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. If it's going to be set in the United States, like if they're going to change that from the book to fit with the first season of Presumed Innocent, then that changes like who I think should be cast. But if they're going to cast it in the United Kingdom, then like that's a different set of casts. The only person that I feel like I have like a clear idea of who should be cast is Layla. And I think in the United States, it should be Amanda Seyfried. If it was in the United Kingdom, it should be Karen. It's Gillan, right? Or Gilland?
That sounds right.
She was in Doctor Who, and she was also in... she was Gamora's sister in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, but I feel like she's worthy of a name.
I know, but it's Karen Gilland or something like
that.
No,
I know, but who's Gamora's sister? She's like Nebula.
I know, Nebula, I know. I just can't think of her name.
She deserves to be name dropped.
You know how my memory works.
I'm like, Gamora's sister.
Oh, stop. But I don't have thoughts for, like, who else should be cast. Like, I don't have thoughts for Julian, I don't have thoughts for Jack, and I don't have thoughts for Davina. I think Davina has to be a very specific character. She's just unique. Like, they have to get that really right, I think.
Yeah, I think your guess of Amanda Seyfried or whatever,
Seyfried?
Yeah, is pretty spot on. I like the Nebula reference just in general for Marvel, but I also think she would do well, but it's neither of them.
Oh.
So, yeah.
So who is it?
And there's only been 4 big name confirmations.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to those after. I'll try to do them in order. So the big one, the big reveal, is Layla is going to be played by Rachel Brosnahan.
Can I see a picture of her?
She's the marvelous
Mrs. Maisel?
Mrs. Maisel.
I don't know. I haven't watched that.
But for those who do know who she is, she's also in House of Cards.
Oh, I feel like that's not a bad casting decision.
No, I like it. I
don't know if I would have picked it, but like I can see it.
Okay, so that's her.
Okay.
And
then these others are speculative.
We'll start with Jack. This is who I think is playing. Well, this guy's confirmed as playing. His name's Jack Rayner, and I think he'll play Jack. And I don't know if he has that description in the book, but I feel like that's who will play
I can
him.
see it, like if they tat him up and make him a little more rugged.
Yeah, he needs some rugged, but he's got some rugged vibes.
Yeah. Okay.
He was in not much. I think the thing he gets the most credit for is Midsummer. Okay, so that's who I think is playing Jack. This person I think is playing Julian. His name is Matthew Rice or Reese. I think it's Reese maybe. He's in Widow's Bay, which is also on Apple TV. He's killing it in that one.
Oh, I don't know if I see that.
I think he'll play Julian. Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like this husband-wife combo.
Huh. I mean, I feel like he could turn it on. I feel like he could definitely turn it on. Like, if he gets into, like...
They give him, like, a...
Julian's persona. I think he could do it.
Yeah, like, he looks pretty good there.
It's not about how he looks. Oh. I just, like... I haven't seen him in enough stuff.
Well, he's in Widow's Bay.
I know, but that's, like... He's playing, like, a dad in that.
Yeah. And then here's the big one. There's a couple more following this one. This person, I think, will play... This is not confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
I think
this is all speculation.
She is confirmed to play in the book, in the movie, in the show.
Who?
But we don't know who. I think she's gonna play Davina.
Okay.
And I hope you agree. Dun dun. Dun, dun.
I love her. What's her name?
Fiona Shaw.
Oh my gosh, she was in Killing Eve. And she was the best part of that show. I swear to God. Watch our vlog about it. She's the best part. Really? You think she's going to be Davina? I don't know who else she would be.
Exactly. She plays this
Audrey?
Rugged.
I think she'd be better as Davina.
I hope it's Davina.
I hope it's Davina.
Because I think of Killing Eve, and I think of that type of character, but as a lawyer. And I'm like, she's tied to the streets. Well, you could be
so
right though. She
good.
could definitely be playing Audrey. Though.
I don't know. I think she's too young for Audrey.
Yeah,
like,
it's
Audrey's
like you're gonna.
an 80-year-old grandma with dementia.
And then
and that's Julian's mom. I don't think that's right.
This other person, I don't know. This is where like I think this person could be Anton. I think this person could be
The person who was killed.
somebody else.
Okay, but they do have like one more confirmed person.
Yeah.
Oh. What have I seen him in?
He's in
He's a good-looking guy. What's his name? Courtney B. Vance.
Courtney B. Vance. He's in
I haven't seen any of those things.
yeah.
Like, I recognize his face, but I just haven't watched any of those films. Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Courtney B. Vance. I could see him playing Smythe.
Mm.
So anyway, House of Cards, Killing Eve Lady, Widow's Bay Man, Midsummer Man, I think make up the
Main four.
main four, the focal four, and
Dude, if Fiona Shaw's in this, she's gonna carry. So, bless.
yeah.
But
Unless
that's
you
it
name
from us.
I'll come
He
back.
said
if
he's
you
done.
wanna
No,
do it.
that's it. That's it from us.
Stay tuned.
Just stay tuned. Okay, hi there. We got back from California 3 days ago. It's Tuesday. We got back Saturday evening. Oh my gosh, my brain is not doing well. I'm not adjusting well to the time. I'm still on California time. I'm like wanting to go to bed really late our time, but I am now back at work, so I'm having to get up early, and so I'm not getting enough sleep, and things are a little rough right now. But I wanted to provide a little bit of an update because on the way back, and honestly I wasn't going to provide updates about this book because I didn't think it was going to be relevant to this vlog, but as I started reading it, it became relevant, and so I wanted to provide an update. I started reading this on the flight back, and this book is There by Tommy Orange. This book, the reason that it's relevant is it is set in Oakland. It basically covers the lives of a group of Native Americans who are all coming to a huge powwow in Oakland, California, and they're all coming for different reasons. They're all of different ages. These Native Americans have all had very different life experiences. Some are from reservations, some are urban natives, some are from kind of in-between spaces. They all have very different lived experiences and are coming to the powwow for very different reasons. Some are kind of coming against their will, some are very into the idea of coming to the powwow for all the things that a powwow represents, and it's a really, really brilliantly crafted story that looks at the history of some of these individuals. Some of it is very centered on the present, and it is weaving together their stories, pushing it to the present through the form of everyone coming to this central place. And the way that Tommy Orange is framing not a singular Native experience, but the many different experiences that Native Americans have and go through in this country and have gone through in this country, I just think is so brilliantly done. I love that Tommy Orange is not really willing to shy away from, you know, the really devastating things that Native Americans are going through. Some of them, the things that Native Americans are subjected to, things like alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide, obesity, and he's not doing it as like a gross caricaturization. We see that sometimes in popular media, but he is, you know, showing the real systemic reasons why Native Americans might turn to substances or other kind of abuses against their body as a result of the historical abuses and injustices that Native Americans have historically faced and presently face. But then he's also showing
really hopeful examples of the ways in which Native Americans live and prosper and find joy and beauty in this life despite the really horrific things that have been pushed upon them by white settlers, and the ways in which Native Americans have been forced to conform and adjust through a number of really horrific policies. It was really interesting. We were in San Francisco, kind of a last minute change of plans for us. Our last day, we went to San Francisco and we actually went to Alcatraz. Alcatraz, if you didn't know, was actually occupied by Native Americans for, I think, a little over a year, during which time they were protesting government policies of kind of forcible relocation, in which the United States was basically refusing to honor previous policies where the United States government gave Native Americans reservation land and was trying to basically assimilate Native Americans through forced urbanization. Native Americans took over Alcatraz when it was no longer a prison, protesting these policies, and some of the characters in this book actually lived on Alcatraz at the time, so that was really, really interesting and like totally coincidental tie-in that I was not expecting as I started to read this book. And then also Oakland is just right across the bay from San Francisco. I didn't go to Oakland, but I love that Oakland in this book is almost like a character in and of itself. I think Oakland sometimes, at least from my perspective, gets a little bit of a bad rap as being like a dangerous and unsavory place, but I like that Tommy Orange is like giving Oakland a little bit of a second life, at least in my perspective, the way that he is talking about Oakland. He's just giving it so much respect as like a place where, you know, people genuinely live and make lives for themselves. And then I also love that Tommy Orange is just so unflinching in the historical injustices that the United States has perpetuated against Native Americans for literally over 500 years. He is just not willing to shy away from that part of our history, and I find it to be really admirable. But he's also just artistic in the way that he is approaching his anger and these, you know, persistent injustices. And I think, yeah, he's just, I don't know, just writing with a certain, yes, level of anger and grief, but also so much compassion and understanding for people who are going through really hard things and having trouble processing, you know, the historical trauma and the like historical memories that are sitting with you, but that you have a hard time understanding that they're even there. I think this book is just a really perfect representation of that, and just trying to understand your identity, knowing that, you know, external forces have deliberately tried to scrub it out of you for 500 years. I think this book is so far, yeah, just hitting all the feels for that. So I'm halfway through. I'm enjoying it immensely so far, and I just love books like this where you get so many different perspectives of like one identity, but having all those different layers to think through what it means to be something, challenging that idea of what it is to be something. And really it's many things. There is no one right answer. I think that's great. I just love it, and I'm really impressed by it, and I'm enjoying it immensely, and I hope to be able to deliver more coherent and thoughtful impressions and feelings by the end of this. But those are my kind of initial thoughts as I'm about 50% of the way through, and I will check in when I finish the book. Oh my goodness, are you tired?
Oh my god, it's a big yawn. Wait, come over here. Oh, thank you. Okay, hi there. We have an update. I finished There honestly, like a week ago. But we were supposed to have book club yesterday, so I was hoping I would do the book club and then give you an update. But our book club got postponed, which is totally fine. Obi, it means I got to spend more time with Obi. I really don't have anything else to add beyond kind of my initial impressions. Like, everything I said then definitely still stands. I think this book, one of the things that I really appreciate about it is that it doesn't tell you how to feel or what to think. It presents you with, I think, as I mentioned, so many different perspectives of what Native life looks like, and it acknowledges that it doesn't encompass all of them, and then kind of invites you to make your own judgment and your own opinion, which I think what I told you last time is still very much how I feel about it now. Like, in many instances, yeah, it felt tragic and difficult and heartbreaking based on all the historical things that happened, but I still felt like there were elements or pieces of hope that I was able to pick out in the individual stories, despite some of the things that happened in the book. And I guess that's just one of the things that I really, really liked about it. One, that you get to kind of inform your own opinion, but two, just that he gave us so many different ways to think about the Native experience. I really didn't have any qualms with this book, except for there were so many perspectives, there were so many characters that we were following. All the young men, like late teens, early 20s, I had a little bit of hard time distinguishing who was who, but Tommy Orange had like a cast of characters and like who they were at the very beginning of the book. I definitely relied on that. Almost every chapter I went back and was like, okay, who's who's doing what, why do I care about them? So yeah, that just like took me out of the story just a tiny bit. But everything else I really loved. I mean, in addition to just kind of some of the larger thematic things, I think it was really well written, and it convinced me to care about characters that we literally sometimes only had like a chapter or two with, maybe a total of 20 pages, much more than I expected to care about them, and had a pretty major emotional impact on me. So yeah, I rate this book a 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was like really, really good. I just had a hard time, keeping track of some of the characters and knowing who was who, but definitely a worthwhile read. And I would be curious about, he wrote another book that's like kind of connected to There, but set in, I think, the 1800s. So I'd just be kind of curious what that one looks like. But yeah, otherwise, this was a really, really strong success, and I'm so glad that I got the opportunity to speak to you all about it when I wasn't really expecting to, except for maybe in my quarterly wrap-ups. But that's the update that we have. Obi had a vet appointment today, so he's a little out of it, as you can see. Oh my god. But we will check in with you once we start or have updates for the next book that we're reading. Hi there, good evening. I'm here, I'm making dinner, but I wanted to provide a little bit of an update. I have started reading My First Summer in the Sierra by John Muir. In fact, I'm like, what am I, 2/3 of the way through, I think. It's a really short book. It's only 6 hours on audio. I listened on 1.5 times speed, and so I was running around doing errands today. I had an optometry appointment, and then I also had a haircut. And so as I was running around listening, I think I listened to like an hour and a half of the book, just going from place to place. And also I dropped off some library books. Anyways, not the point. Here to give you an update on my thoughts and feedback. Similar to the Yosemite, I am struggling to maintain interest. Like, there are times when I'm being read to, and John Muir is talking about, it's set in a diary format. He's doing sheep herding, but he's not the sheep herder. He's just with a sheep herder. Basically, he was asked to accompany a sheep herder because the person who owns the flock didn't trust that the sheep herder would do a good job, and so he asked John Muir, hey, I think this will be mutually advantageous, will you go and accompany my sheep herder, make sure that he takes care of the sheep, and then
in doing so, you'll have the time and the freedom to explore the Yosemite Valley and the other places in the Sierra that, you take the sheep to get fattened up over the summer. And John Muir was like, great, that sounds fantastic. So I think in some ways I like that it's a diary format, because every day is a new day and we're getting to explore the Yosemite, including a lot of places that we went to, including the Tuolumne Meadows, the Yosemite Valley, and he's mentioning like hikes that we did. We did like the Cathedral Lakes hike. We did the hikes to Vernal Falls. We did a hike in the Mariposa Grove, which is where the giant sequoias are in Yosemite. He's talking about that. And then he's also describing a lot of the wildlife that we had the opportunity to see. We saw bears. We saw a lot of the different squirrels that he's talking about. We saw lizards. He's talking about lizards a lot. He's talking about woodpeckers. This is all stuff that I saw. And so in some ways it's really relatable, and I'm glad that I'm reading it after. But as I mentioned, similar to how I was feeling about the Yosemite, there are times when I just kind of struggle to remain engaged, because he'll just go off on these like really long tangents of how he's feeling about nature or what it reminds him of, or like, and sometimes it's interesting, and other times I just get like in my own thoughts thinking about something else, and I have to really deliberately be like, okay, come back to the story. This is what we're focused on. Like, this is what we're listening to. There's also in this one been like a lot of God talk, and I think like on the one hand what he's trying to say is that like God in all of his majesty like basically created the Yosemite, and there's like nothing comparable. Like even when we create holy spaces like the church, like there is just nothing like what God himself created, which like that's a beautiful message and really shows how into nature and how reverential John Muir is about the Yosemite, but really just like nature, Mother Nature as it is. But the God talk really has been like kind of excessive at times, where I'm like, okay, I get it. It's part of it. I think it's a side effect of the time. Like a lot of people were more religious then than they are now. Great, no problem. Just not something that like I really care about. And then I don't know, like some days there are like interesting things going on. Like he'll have a face off with a bear. He'll go on like a crazy hike, or he goes down and meets a friend or whatever. And then other days he's just like, this is a tree that I saw. I love this tree. Let me tell you all the things about this tree and all the things that it makes me think of. And I can't believe that we have trees like this. And have you ever seen a more majestic tree than this? And I'm like, yes, I agree, John, but like, damn, did we need this much about this tree, or did we need that much about a fly or a mosquito? Like, I don't know. So yeah, it's a little bit 50-50 for me right now. I think it's a good book. I think there's like good things to take from it, and I think John Muir himself like ended up, is like an incredible person, and like really is like a leader in the outdoor spaces, and like I can definitely understand like now hearing his own words like where that love and appreciation comes from, and I'm like glad I'm getting to read that, especially after having visited there, seeing it firsthand, and like understanding for myself the beauty of Yosemite and some of the surrounding areas. But I'm just glad it's not much longer than like a single summer. I don't know if I would have wanted much more than that, but that's where I'm at right now. I'll update you when I finish it. I'm gonna go right now because I'm cutting onions and I'm about to start crying. So I'll check in soon. Hi there, good afternoon. I wanted to check in and let you all know that I finished my first summer in the Sierra. And I think like I mentioned in the first check-in, while John Muir's kind of enthusiasm, as well as just curiosity and general reverence for nature, was definitely really present throughout his diary entries and his writings, I struggled to stay engaged with this book listening to it on audio. And I think even had I read it physically, I would have found my brain drifting to other things, because John Muir will often get caught up going on little tangents, thinking in his own little brain of the things that he's seeing make him think of, or just goes off on other things that he's thinking about. And that's fine, but for me personally, it just didn't work as the most interesting read.
And even though I was able to relate to a lot of the things he was talking about because I myself had seen them, I just don't know if I needed to read everything that he had written. You know, I could appreciate that for myself. Again, the things that I have to say about him being observant, definitely incredible. His enthusiasm, wonderful. His curiosity, incredible. I think more of us could learn from the curiosity that John Muir presents in his writings. But because I had such a hard time staying engaged with it, it just didn't live up to kind of what I needed. I also found myself really surprised by, you know, John Muir being someone who is seemingly so open-minded and curious about the world. He had really negative feelings about Native Americans. He often, at this time when he's writing, Native Americans still lived in and around the Yosemite. Not all Native Americans were relegated to reservations, especially in the West. But every time he came across Native Americans, he had kind of heinous things to say about Native Americans, just their appearance and their overall demeanor. He had a really negative impression and feeling about them. And it was really jarring to read, especially considering someone who in the outdoor space is seen as like kind of an icon, as someone who is so progressive and forward-leaning when it comes to preservation, just had such little appreciation and lack of respect for the people who had been tending that land for thousands of years. That was really hard to read. So I don't know, overall, you know, I can definitely understand where John Muir is coming from as he talks about nature. Those are things that I feel myself when I am out and about, but the overall flow of the story at times felt a little bit too meandering for me, felt like we got a little bit off base at times. And then, yeah, again, the representation of Native Americans, the way that he spoke about it's not even just his experiences, it's really just like his prejudices. That was really hard to read. So, I don't know, that's where we're at with My First Summer in the Sierra. I'm giving it a 2.5 out of 5. The diary format, in this instance, just didn't work very well for me. And I think really it's more to do with John Muir's writing style, but because, as I mentioned previously, I struggled with the Yosemite, which is his travel guide to the Yosemite after spending so much time there. But I'm not moving away from John Muir just yet. My last book of this video is going to be Guardians of the Valley, John Muir and the Friendship That Saved the Yosemite by Dean King. I am just really interested in, I guess, reading how John Muir got from being kind of like a wandering, meandering individual who was doing sheep herding one summer in the Yosemite. Of course, I can see the passion that he's writing with then, but I'm just curious to see how that translated from him being relatively young and over the course of his life informing a lifetime of kind of conservationship and an effort to preserve the Yosemite and Yosemite National Park. So I'm really looking forward to reading this, and I hope that this more modern writing style works for me. I hope that it will be engaging and interesting. It is like 360-ish pages of like actual text, and then quite a few pages of notes and references as bibliography. So yeah, I'll be curious to see what this looks like and just kind of the history behind preserving the Yosemite. It is definitely my understanding that John Muir played a major part in that, in convincing Congress to pass legislation, and then also, of course, setting up the Sierra Club. But I am just very much looking forward to seeing Dean King's kind of chronicling of the whole event. And then, of course, he's talking about a friendship. I don't know what that friendship is. I don't know who he was friends with, friends in high places, or if it's someone else that helped enable kind of that partnership to save the Yosemite, in Dean King's words. So this is the book that I'm going to be moving on to. I'm going to start it today. I have about a week to finish it before this vlog goes up, and I'll give you some thoughts when I get a little bit into it. And again, yeah, hoping that it's going to be a good one, especially after John Muir's writings himself have kind of put me off of him. So I'll be back with updates later. Hello there. I am here with a little update. I've started Guardians of the Valley. I finished one part, and I'll just say part 1 was a little bit rough for me. Part 1 was very much like kind of background on both John Muir and his writer associate, what's his name? Yeah, Robert Johnson. it's like background on their lives, but it felt, I had a couple issues with part 1. First, it was really imbalanced in providing that background. I felt like there was a lot more airtime given to John Muir, which I think is, maybe fair. John Muir is definitely the more famous of the two of them, and it really is his love and fondness of nature that forms kind of the foundation for this story and, fighting to save Yosemite. But the reason that I had issues, I think, maybe with this imbalance was because the author relies really, really heavily on John Muir's own writings to depict that love of nature and to, I guess, tell John Muir's story in his own words. And it's not to say that, that's not valuable, but I've already struggled through 2 of John Muir's writings, and it just, his writings just aren't for me. And so when we have pages that are, this much text and this long, and this much of it feels like some version of John Muir's writing, it just wasn't the most pleasant experience for me personally, because, as I've already mentioned, I just struggle with his writing a little bit. It's so verbose, and in some instances, like, maybe just a little bit overwritten. And this story has definitely given me some context for that. Like, when he's writing for Robert Johnson's publication, The Century, for example, they asked him for, like, 10,000 word manuscripts. And so, maybe he's trying to push to get to that word count. But then, of course, he's also inspired by, like, Emerson's writings, and he really was spiritually moved by the things that he saw. That's all good and fine, but it's just maybe not for me. And having to spend so much more time reading John Muir's writing rather than the author doing the work of, like, paraphrasing or even cutting down on some of that background. Like, we saw so many of John Muir's excursions, including to places that aren't on the Sierra Nevadas. Like, we got stuff that was in, more southern California, but then also his visits to Mount Rainier. It's all well and interesting, but when it's entirely backed up by his own writings, it just wasn't pleasant for me. And so the entire time that I was reading part 1, I was like, I might need to DNF this. I had, like, really strong DNF feelings, but I was like, let me try part 2 and see if it gets a little bit better. And for me, so far part 2 has been a lot stronger because it's very much about the kind of the real advocacy that both John Muir and Robert Johnson in their respective capacities are doing to convince Congress, to convince, the state of California, to convince the president, to convince the Secretary of the Interior that we need national parks, we need protected forest lands, and here's why. So seeing kind of some of those political developments, and then also the establishment of the Sierra Club has been really interesting and enjoyable and far less reliant on John Muir's writings and more the author, I think, writing to what that history looks like. I'm at a point now where I think I'm going to keep reading it and just see if it continues to be really good or if I feel like I have DNF feelings. I have read, quite a few pages today. I went to the dermatologist to have my annual skin checkup, and for the 2nd year in a row, I've had moles biopsied. So for anyone out there that, like, isn't getting skin checks, go get your skin checked. The last mole that I had biopsied came back as, like, high, like, basically the way they described it was, like, in the process of becoming cancer. So I was like, that's fun. And then I also went and picked up new glasses. I went to the optometrist a couple weeks ago, and he was like, no, your vision's good. Like, you have 20/20 vision, but because you spend all day in front of a computer and you're reading so much, your eyes are getting really fatigued, which might be contributing to, the headaches that you get on a regular basis. And so I'm going to prescribe these like basically reading glasses to you, and I got, like, the blue light stuff and whatever. So anyways, I will use these when I read, and I have good insurance, so it didn't cost me anything, which is good. But anyways, that's been my day so far. I went to Target. I saw Chris too and got some stuff, and we got lunch. But in between all that, like, while waiting at the dermatologist, while waiting at the optometrist, and then even before I went to the optometrist today, I read quite a bit, and I feel like I'm back in it. I read from page 139 to, I don't know, where am I? Maybe 170? Maybe a little less. Yeah, 170. So I've read quite a bit today. I guess not that much. It's like 30 pages. But like 30 pages just in between things. One of the things that I'm enjoying is that the book has like really amazing photos and like artwork that are really, really cool. Like for instance, they were talking about the effort to do like make Sequoia National Park and then also Kings Canyon National Park, and John Muir and Robert Johnson are both writing extensively about kind of the logging operations that were basically clear cutting our sequoia trees. And there's this really amazing photo here about, like, this was at the time one of the largest trees in the United States. Loggers cut it down and you can see everything around them, you know, save like a couple trees in the background, has been totally clear cut. And yeah, I don't know, the time in which Muir and Johnson were super active as conservationists was during a time when the United States was in a period of major growth and also major expansion. And I don't know, the greed of man knows no limits. Reading through, you know, desecrating these beautiful what are now national parks with logging industry, the mining industry, livestock. It's just hard to imagine people having so little consideration for like the natural wonder and beauty that these different national parks provided. And so in that way I can definitely relate to John Muir's feelings, and even some of his writings that he had on the matter. I will say, in the second part, we have had some of Muir's writings, but it's very much him leaning into political activism and like trying to push this message of conservation, which I have found to be much more enjoyable than his writings on like his experiences. I think, yeah, he's definitely, you know, relying on his previous experiences to inform his arguments makes them really strong and compelling and more enjoyable, like I said, to read than his kind of ramblings through the Sierras. Anyways, very rambly, but that's where I'm at, and I'm hoping to finish it in the next couple days, and or decide that like I just can't do it anymore. I don't know, one of the two. And I'll get back to you when I have some more updates. I have finished Guardians of the Valley, and I think while I enjoyed parts 2, 3, and 4 more than I enjoyed part 1, especially because we get more into the fight for Yosemite, 1 for creating the park, but 2 for kind of maintaining protections of the park from loggers, from people who have livestock, from miners, but then also from San Francisco and other parts of California that wanted to use some of the rivers and water sources in Yosemite. I enjoyed that. That was really interesting. But some of the issues that I saw in part 1, particularly the author, I think overly relying on the words of Muir in particular to convey his points. In particular, literally importing or like stamping in what felt like whole pages of like his writing, maybe using like a couple words to transition from sentence to sentence. That kind of continued throughout the book. I would have almost preferred that the author just took a little bit more agency to write. When the author did that, I felt like the story was a lot stronger and it flowed a lot better. When he was kind of relying so heavily on Muir's own writing, the book just, in my opinion, felt a little bit clunky, and I think part of that is just like a sign of the times. Muir was writing in the 1800s and just has a very flowery, descriptive, you know, I think in some ways like poetic, some people would describe it that way, poetic way of writing. He was definitely inspired by
some of the great naturalist writers of the time. And, you know, while that works for some people, I previously mentioned, it just didn't really work for me. And then also, you know, the part of this book that I really liked was getting into some of the political considerations. I liked seeing the different, I guess, political machinations play out. I liked seeing that some of the issues that we have today in American politics were very much still relevant back then, like the role of a really strong and well-funded lobby, how hard that is to go against, even when, like, the populace is behind you. That was relevant in the case of, like, San Francisco trying to obtain water rights in Yosemite National Park. The big debates, I think, were well done. I think the other thing that I didn't think this book did particularly well is sometimes it would try to carry an idea through, like, multiple chapters. So in one instance, it was talking about, like, extensive lobbying, like, right outside of Yosemite National Park and some of the implications for the ecosystem. And it would, like, this was particularly in part 4, and so it would introduce that in one chapter, and then it would talk about it in the next chapter, and then it would talk about it in the next chapter. And I guess I just would have preferred that it was, like, all one chapter, because I was like, okay, this whole part is about, like, the water fight, and this, like, logging part just doesn't feel like it fits very nicely into whatever you're trying to say. And so it either needs to be, like, its own part, it needs to be its own chapter, it just needs to be somewhere else, because it doesn't fit in this part that literally, what's it called? Hold on. It's called A California Water War. Talking about the logging stuff doesn't really fit very nicely in here. And also I thought it was a little bit redundant that the part previously was called the Water Stealers. Like, why do we have 2 parts dedicated to the water issue? I understand that the fight for Hetch Hetchy, which is this area in Yosemite Park that is now a reservoir that's been artificially dammed to provide water for San Francisco in the Bay Area. Previously, it was like a really nice valley that had a river running through it. Anyways, it's not like that anymore. But we have, it was basically like a 10-year plus fight for San Francisco to try to get access to this area and to make it into a reservoir. It's curious that we had like 2 dedicated parts to that issue. I think that could have been consolidated down a little bit, and then maybe we would have had like 1 part dedicated to kind of the water war and maybe another part dedicated to some of the other fights going on in and around Yosemite, maybe pertaining to like some of the logging issues or some of the like encroachment issues, or I guess just some of the other things that maybe the Sierra Club was fighting for or dealing with at the time. Could have made maybe a little bit more of an interesting and less like protracted book, in my opinion. But I don't know. Yeah, overall, I think part 2 for me was the strongest part. But I did like parts 3 and 4 to a lesser extent. Part 1, as I mentioned, going over like the background of specifically Muir was not my favorite. Part 2 I also liked because that's where we got to see John Muir have like a camping trip with President Roosevelt. Later in the book, Muir also got to go on a camping trip with I think it was President Taft. It was kind of interesting that we got to see him go on camping trips with 2 different presidents and, you know, have a really strong influence in that way. I think earlier I mentioned that I felt like there was an imbalance between Muir and Johnson. I think as the book went on, we got a stronger sense of who Johnson is and just how influential and important he was. Like, he's not just a correspondent of Muir's, but like really, really, really was like a key influential person in ensuring that Yosemite National Park was protected, and also just a key player in refining some of the messaging that Muir won, but also the Sierra Club
and some of the other associations that all these people were in were trying to push around kind of a conservation message. And if it wasn't for Johnson, I just don't know if the conservation movement at the time would have been as strong or as enduring as it is today. So I liked that this book gave, you know, this kind of unsung hero a little bit more of a voice. So yeah, I don't know. Overall, this book was a little bit of a mixed bag for me, but as I read through it, it definitely gave me a lot to think about and was definitely enjoyable because I have visited a lot of the national parks that this book talks about. I've been to Glacier, I've been to Yellowstone, I've been to Mount Rainier, I've been to Yosemite, and then obviously within the Yosemite, a lot of the places that they were talking about in this book, I went to during my trip to California. And I also, so much of the book focusing on Hetch Hetchy and this water war, you know, I went there and the reservoir definitely was not very interesting to look at. And at the very end of the book, in the epilogue, there was like a little bit of a discussion about, like, you know, kind of in the early 2000s, there was a talk about, like, maybe we should do a new study about moving the reservoir further down the lake, or further down the river, because that was an option. Like, the reservoir never needed to be in Yosemite National Park, but it was cheaper for San Francisco to put it there because there were no other claims versus putting it down further in the river. There were other claims that they would have had to compete against, and it would have been more expensive for them to pay for it further down the river than up in Hetch Hetchy in Yosemite National Park. But in the early 2000s, there was kind of a push for maybe we should re-examine where this reservoir sits. And it's really interesting, California's long-standing Senator Dianne Feinstein at the time said something to the effect of basically like, it's fucking stupid. I don't think we need to do that for a campsite. Let me pull up exactly what she said. She said, and quote, "All this for an expanded campground? Dumb. It's dumb, dumb, dumb." And I'll just say, having gone to Hetch Hetchy, I would love to go back in 50 years and it's not a reservoir, it's not a dam. Like, it's restored to its natural state. It's a beautiful meadow encompassed between these two amazing canyons with waterfalls, and you could actually camp there, and you could go from Hetch Hetchy over to the Tuolumne Meadows. I think that would be absolutely phenomenal, because back in the day, the only way that you were able to really reach the Tuolumne Meadows was either from Yosemite Valley going up and over, or from Hetch Hetchy going up and over. Now, like, really the primary way to reach the Tuolumne Meadows is that they had to, like, basically blast holes in rocks. Like, they had to tunnel massive rocks for people to be able to drive to the Tuolumne Meadows. So anyways, I think it would definitely be worth a reconsideration, and like restoring the national park to its former glory and to its natural state, and really ensuring that the people of this country and really like the world have the national park and the monuments that are supposed to be protected restored to their natural glory. But so yeah, that was kind of interesting that, like, that's kind of how the epilogue left off. So anyways, also saying, I think this book did give me a lot to think about, but I just think the execution wasn't maybe to my liking, and so for that reason I think I would sit at probably like a 3 out of 5 for this book in particular. But overall, I think my reading for all my California reads were really, really successful. I enjoyed getting to read so many different books centering on different parts of California, specifically the different parts of California that I visited. And also getting to read like a murder mystery or a thriller while we were in California. I think this is a really good practice when going to new places to just experience it at a deeper level and to gain a deeper appreciation for the places that you go. And so yeah, I'm really happy that I did this, and I think like the most California book that I read was definitely Guardians of the Valley. This book
traversed so many different places, and then also because it's historically situated, I just have a better appreciation for how the state developed, how some of the national parks that I visited developed, and yeah, I just have a better understanding of also just like how this country developed, which I think is phenomenal and wonderful. I think the book that I enjoyed the most during this reading vlog was probably, that's tough. Probably honestly Dissection of a Murder. I realize that isn't like the most California book, but listening to it on audio while we drove all over the place and having Chris to talk to about it and like bounce theories off of was just such a fun experience. And I think for like a murder mystery, a thriller, and just specifically a legal thriller, I just think it was really well done and it was so twisty. I would highly recommend that one. And I will look forward to Presumed Innocent Season 2 coming out. For, I guess, maybe like an author that I want to read more from, I guess it would be a toss-up between Tommy Orange, reading kind of the follow-up to There, and then also Steinbeck. I would like to read more Steinbeck. I really want to read East of Eden. I'm sorry I didn't get to it in this vlog. I had to return the book to the library. I was only able to check it out for 21 days. I didn't realize that when I checked it out. I wasn't able to renew it. But there are other books by Steinbeck that I would also like to read. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at the end of this one. I had a blast doing this vlog and then also, of course, going to California. I will see you all for my quarterly wrap up at the beginning of July, and we will talk very soon.